So in this video, we will be looking at the chemical senses, which includes taste and smell. So the other name for taste is gustation, and the other name for smell is olfaction. And these are known as the chemical senses because they involve sensing chemicals in the environment. And they both have sensory receptors that respond to molecules either in the food we eat or in the air that we breathe. So when it comes to taste, I'm sure you've all heard of taste buds before, but maybe didn't know exactly what we're referring to. So taste buds are groupings of taste receptors or taste receptor cells, which have these hair-like extensions that protrude into the central pore of the taste bud. And so what happens is the taste molecules of food will bind to those receptors. They cause a chemical change within that cell, and those changes result in the neural impulse being sent to the brain. So this is where transduction for taste is happening in these groupings of taste receptors. They actually only have a life cycle of about 10 days to 2 weeks. So on average, every 10 days to 2 weeks, they are actually dying and now new ones are being regenerated. We do have 5 different types of groupings, or 5 different types of taste buds. These are sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and then the 5th is umami, and this is associated with the taste for specifically MSG, but it's thought to be kind of involved in our taste for the word is on the tip of my tongue and I've forgotten the word, but for fatty tastes, salty tastes, I shouldn't really say salty because that's one of the other taste buds, but for these fatty foods and foods with a lot of MSG, this is what's allowing us to taste that. Spicy is actually not a taste, it is in fact a burn, and this is because of a molecule in peppers called capsicum, and that molecule binds to receptors, but not taste receptors. It actually binds to receptors that detect temperature, and they send information or messages to the brain about pain. And so that's actually what you're experiencing. When you experience that, I want to say taste, but it's not a taste. That spiciness is actually, it's the temperature that it's creating and the pain message that's being sent to your brain that results in a burn that is in that experience. So it's not actually a taste, just a random fact. Now, as we've discussed before, the thalamus is kind of the sensory relay system in the brain. All of our senses, apart from smell, first go to the thalamus. And then from there, information about taste is also then sent to the medulla, which remember is in the hindbrain. And one of the things that the medulla is involved in is our gag reflex. So if something's bad or potentially poisonous, or our body thinks it's, this is going to make us sick or we shouldn't be eating this, that's going to trigger that reflex. Information can also be sent to the limbic system regarding taste, and then of course the gustatory cortex is the main stopping point where taste gets processed. The last thing I want to mention in relation to taste is there seems to be a very strong relationship between taste and disgust. Now, disgust is often thought of as an emotion. It's that feeling of revulsion that we get when something's very unpleasant. And actually what you'll find is that the part of the brain involved in disgust and the part of the brain related to taste are extremely close together. And taste is the primary sense that seems to be linked with disgust. And this makes sense. It's thought that this emotion of disgust has evolved as a response to foods that could harm us. So we eat something that is either poisonous, and in which case it's probably going to have a very, very bitter taste, or something that's bad. You have the dairy product that's gone bad, it's going to taste bad. You're going to get that feeling of disgust, and that's what prevents you from having any more of it, right? It tells you something's not okay with this. So it seems to be somewhat a survival mechanism here. And so then let's move on to smell, our second chemical sense. So as I mentioned, the technical term for this is olfaction. You will need to know on the exam that taste is referred to as let me go back here, gustation, see, and then smell is olfaction. Now the olfactory receptor cells for smell Also, similar to the receptors for taste, they contain these small hair-like extensions, and those hair-like extensions serve as the site for odor molecules to interact with these chemical receptors located on these extensions. And this is located in this mucous membrane at the top of the nose. And so as those odor molecules bind to the receptors, there's this chemical change that then causes those signals to be sent to the olfactory bulb, which is found in the frontal lobe. And it's in the olfactory bulb where the olfactory nerve begins. So it then carries that information to the brain. However, as I have mentioned before, it does not go to the thalamus in this case. That information is sent directly to the limbic system, which is part of why there's such a strong connection between emotional memories and smell. And then it can also then be sent to the primary olfactory cortex, which, as you may imagine, is located near the gustatory cortex. And I say that, as you may imagine, because there is such a strong connection between smell and taste. So, for example, you might have noticed that if you have a cold, your nose is blocked, food doesn't taste the same. Olfaction is a key factor in the flavor of foods. And again, this is really a survival mechanism. Being able to smell food and that playing such a strong role in taste helps to tell us if foods are potentially rotten. And we can do that before we even taste them. You can smell if milk or another dairy product has gone bad. You can smell if meat has gone bad. So we don't even need to taste them in order to know this is bad, I probably shouldn't eat this or I'll get sick. The other thing I want to talk to you about in relation to chemical senses, which is where it gets very interesting, is pheromones. And again, I'm sure this is something you've heard of, and we're going to talk about some of the different research that has been done into pheromones. So pheromones are chemical substances that are found in bodily secretions, and they are emitted by humans and various other species. So this is why when dogs are sniffing each other's bums when they meet each other, they are picking up on those pheromones, and they can learn a lot. In general, we learn a lot from pheromones, even if we're not consciously aware of it. So pheromones have a lot of functions. One of the main things that they do is they provide social information. They communicate social information such as reproductive status and genetic quality. They're also involved, I'll come back to that, but they're also involved in marking one's territory, bonding with offspring, establishing dominance hierarchies. So again, this is referring more to other species than humans, but hierarchies in other species, this is largely to do with pheromones. And again, like I said, when dogs meet each other, they can understand the reproductive status of that other dog. They know, kind of what that dog's eaten, their sex, where they've been. They get a lot of information from that smell. But it seems that is also happening in humans. One thing that researchers found is that men give off a stronger smell than women do, but women have a stronger sense of smell than men. Now, this is related to this idea that pheromones are giving off information about genetic quality. It really comes down to the woman in terms of choosing a mate that has the best genes to pass on to her offspring. So it makes sense that the woman would have the strong sense of smell in order to detect genetic quality, and the man gives off the stronger smell that needs to be detected. They're giving off that genetic information for women to detect, although this is happening largely unconsciously. What research has found is that women tend to find high testosterone males more attractive when they're at their most fertile point of their cycle. And I'm mentioning this because this is very much how attractive we find someone is very much linked to their smell, and I have more information on that. But what this study found is that when women are ovulating, so at their most fertile point, they are more attracted to high testosterone men. Okay, because that they're giving off that genetic information. It's signaling to the woman, the high quality genetic information that would be passed on to the offspring. And as I mentioned, this is linked to pheromones because what they've also found is that women rate, this is women that have been blindfolded, will rate the body odor of attractive men as being sexier than less attractive men. So there seems to be this connection between pheromones and our level of attraction towards someone. And actually what they've found is that we are if a person smells like us, sorry, the less a person smells like us, the less repulsive we will find their smells. There was a study that found that the less a person smelled like them, the less repulsive they actually found their armpits smell. And it's thought that, olfaction is playing a role in identifying who is genetically related. So if someone is very genetically related to you, then you're going to have a similar smell. And what research shows is that you're more likely to dislike that smell. You are more likely going to like the smell of someone that is not genetically similar and therefore has a different smell. And it's thought that that is preventing incest. Okay, if you're less likely to be attracted to someone that is genetically similar to you, you're less likely to reproduce with that person. So it does play a role in attraction. And connected to that, another interesting fact is they've found that when women are exposed to pheromones, it actually activates regions in the brain that are associated with things like attention, with social cognition, with emotional processing, and then lastly, sexual behavior. Now, the interesting part of this is that the same regions appear to be activated in homosexual males, but not heterosexual males. So this is providing some support for the biological components underlying sexuality. It seems to be driving, to some extent, who we are sexually attracted to, and seems to be driving those human sexual instincts. Something else that researchers found is that men can actually tell the stage of a woman's menstrual cycle from her body odor. Again, this is, largely unconscious. We're not aware that we're picking up on this, but in research, they've found that men were able to predict the stage that a woman was in based on her body odor. And this also is linked to menstrual synchronicity, or menstrual synchrony. So you may have heard that women that spend a lot of time together, their menstrual cycles eventually sync up. That doesn't happen to all women, and the difference seems to be pheromones. So studies have shown that women whose menstrual cycles become synced are more sensitive to a specific pheromone compared to women who don't. So whether or not you're giving off that specific pheromone and whether or not you pick up on that in someone else seems to determine whether or not the menstrual cycle becomes synced. Last random fact connected to pheromones, women rate the smell of men who don't eat meat as more pleasant than men who do eat meat. So the food that you eat seems to play a role in the pheromones you give off, and meat eaters tend to smell worse. So there you go, some random facts about pheromones.